Welcome, friends. Welcome to our very first Haunted Library book discussion. I couldn't be more excited. And I want to go ahead and welcome my friend Jen.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, Jen. And thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm so happy you guys are here. I hope you're ready to discuss this wonderful, wonderful book. Hi, Kat. Welcome. So happy you're here. I hope you finished the book, Kat. Let us know if you finished. So happy you're here. Hi, Debbie. Yes, Debbie's here. Debbie, I hope you finished it. I know you started a little later. Let us know if you finished. So happy you're here. Hi, Dee. Thank you for joining us. Yes, Eleanor. Hi, Eleanor. So happy our friends are here.
Yes.
Ready to discuss this great book. If you're just joining us, welcome. This is going to be our live discussion on The Place Where They Buried Your Heart by Christina Henry. And this is officially the first book that I went ahead and picked for the Haunted Library. And I'm so excited to share all my thoughts with you guys and see if you guys liked it as much as I did. A little bit of a spoiler there. So let me know in the chat if you are here, and let us know if you read this with us. Okay. So let me pop up to the comments. Hi, welcome, Crafting with Class. So glad you're here. Oh my gosh, Debbie finished 10 minutes ago.
You did it. Hey.
Yes, Debbie, you did it. Yes. Oh my gosh, I hope it was worth it. Sometimes it's so good when you know you're on a time crunch and you have to finish a book. Sometimes that's the best feeling ever because you're like, yes, I was able to do it. Hi, Ariel. Thank you for joining us. Oh man, yo, I haven't read this book, so I'm not gonna say. I just want to say hi. Hi, Alicia. Hi, thank you for popping in to say hi. And I recommend that you read it. It's a good
Yes.
one. It's really, really good. Cat finished. Yes, Cat. Awesome. So glad that you were able to finish. And Erin finished the book last month. Good. Yeah, I read it a bit ago too, Erin. So I tried to read it early on, and now today I was like, crunch time. Let me go over character names. Let me go over all my notes. Thankfully, I did a lot of bookmarking and all of that. So I was able to do it. This is Carly. Yes, Carly. Hi. Carly's one of my friends on Discord too. She's on the Discord for the Haunted Library. I do want to talk about that. So the Haunted Library does have a Discord. That's a part of my channel. So if you want to be able to chat with us and keep in touch of all the books that we're reading, please make sure that you do that. Let's see. Debbie says it was best way to get it done. Hey Debbie, I'm so glad. All right. So while we're waiting for more people to join us, Jen, again, I want to thank you for, being my co-host. I appreciated you having me as your co-host in your first discussion for your book club. And if you would now talk a little bit about your channel, let them know. And by the way, guys, if you're not following Jen, you need to be following her. She's absolutely awesome, and her content is great. And she has such sophisticated conversations about literature, and it's awesome. So tell us a little bit, Jen, about your channel.
Thank you, Isabel. I'm so excited to be here. I'm honored that you asked me. So I am Jen. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Threads at Literary Love 123, where I like to read, analyze, and discuss horror through a literary lens.
And I absolutely love a lot of your choices for literary horror, because I love the literary horror stuff that you've been picking recently for your book club. You also have a book club. Tell them a little bit about your book club.
I do. I run the Literary Love Book Club. Our book selection for January was Ligeia by Edgar Allan Poe, but I only do books every other month. So the live show for Ligeia is this Sunday on my channel at 1 p.m. Central Time. And if you haven't read Ligeia by Edgar Allan Poe, it's a super short story, so you can read that and then join the discussion for Sunday. Then our next book selection is actually going to be a couple of romantic poems in March. So you can find all those details on my channel. And I also have a Discord Literary Love 123 Discord, and you can get information there.
Awesome. I will be there. I did my rereading of Ligeia. I was telling Jen, although I've read it and taught it before, I wanted a refresher. So I went ahead and read it last night and it was wonderful. Fell in love all over again with Poe and his prose and his poetry because there's both of that in there, you know.
He approves. He's back here. He approves. He's honored.
He does. Awesome. So let's see, Erin. Really enjoyed it. I loved her book Near the Bone. That's a really popular one, Erin, actually. And you know, I haven't read that. We didn't talk about that, Jen, backstage.
Yeah, I haven't read that one yet either.
Yeah, people love that one. So I do have to pick that one up. I was telling Jen that now that well, that's a spoiler for my rating. So let me hold on to that comment for a second. I also read the House That Horror Built. I love that one, Erin. I actually gave that one a 5-star and I loved it. I really, really did. I recommend that one widely. I don't think a lot of people loved it. So I might be, we might not be in agreement with a lot of people, but I did enjoy that one. I thought it was great. The AP Lit Club, yes. Mindy, hi Mindy. Thanks for joining us, Mindy. Mindy's also a wonderful content creator. If you're not following Mindy, make sure you are following Mindy. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit. Again, if you haven't told us if you read it or not, please let us know in the comments. Did you read it? And now that you're telling us if you read it or not, what was your rating? Like, I want to start off with our ratings just so we know where we stand. So let us know, did you read it? What did you rate it? I'll have Jen go first, then I'll follow, and then we'll share out some comments.
I gave it 4 stars. There were a few things that kept me from giving it 5 stars, but I know Isabel plans for us to talk about that a little bit later, so I'll save my reasons why. But I liked it. Obviously, I loved it a lot for 4 stars. That's a very good book for me.
Yeah, awesome. So I rated it 5 stars. I really, really loved it. And of course, not a perfect book, but there were so many things that gave me the 5-star vibe. When I first finished, I said, man, this feels like it's 5-star, but there were a couple things missing for me. But I still, overall, I felt that what I liked was so good that I had to give it the 5-star. But awesome. So both of us gave it a pretty good rating. Let's see what people in the comments are saying and what they have rated it. So Kat, I want to read Near the Bone. Okay, so Kat wants to read that too. Kat is another booktuber. You need to be following Kat. If you're not following Kat, please go ahead and check out Kat's channel as well. I really enjoyed this book. Yay, good. Carly gave it 4 stars. Awesome, Carly. Just like Jen. This was my first Christina Henry. I have The Ghost Tree on my shelf. Yeah, we both talked about that one a little bit earlier. That was a 3-star for you, Jen?
3-star. I gave 5 stars to Horseman. That's my favorite by Christina Henry so far.
Yeah, and that's a retelling of The Headless Horseman.
Yeah, it's kind of like a sequel. It's like what happened after. It's so good, though.
I need to get to that one. Mindy gave it 4 stars as well. Oh my goodness, so many good ratings for this book. I really liked it. 4 stars. I had things that I was not great in it. Okay, yeah, Debbie, and we'll talk about some of the things that maybe people felt could have been better. I have like a whole little banner that I've created for that, a section for us to talk about that. Yes, Erin, 5 stars. Me too. Eleanor, 4.5 star. Yes, Eleanor. And I think Eleanor mentioned this was her favorite read of January, if I'm not mistaken. I saw Eleanor saying that. So awesome. 3 stars. Okay, Kat, I can't wait to see what you thought of like some of those parts that you think could have been a little bit better. Ariel read it in early January, and gave it 4 stars. Okay, another 4-star. I love that. Erin is reading The Ghost Tree now. Okay, I love it. Awesome. Okay, so far, even the 3 stars.
Yes,
good. So I think we're doing well. So I wanted to start off by diving in. Obviously, this is marketed and pitched as a horror book, right? So it's a horror novel, and I wanted to talk a little bit about just horror in general, fear, what scares us, and that's always something that I think makes for interesting conversation. So whenever I go into a horror book, I'm always wondering, is this going to be like realistic horror, or are we going there? Are we going into the paranormal with this book, you know? And so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what you find scarier. You know, personally for me, the paranormal is always scarier than like realistic horror. I know for some people it's not. Just the feasibility of like realistic horror makes it more frightening, you know. But personally, I'm partial to the paranormal, and in books I like when it's done well, because I think it could go wrong sometimes, you know, like it's not always like well done when you do go the supernatural route or the paranormal route as an author. But I do prefer those that do tap into that. So Jen, if you could share a little bit of that with us.
In fictional reading, I tend to prefer the paranormal or supernatural horror. If we're talking about what scares me more in real life, it
Uh-huh.
would be realistic things
Yeah.
happening. So, you know, I kind of think about it in two different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so too, because I mean, if we're thinking real life, you know, horror can affect us in our actual lives a little bit
Right.
more. I find the unknown so scary. You know, there's just something about that is truly like, you know, frightening. Um, so let me dive into the comments a little bit. So it's not usually my thing, but it was good. Okay, great. Awesome. Welcome, Terry. So Terry gave it 5 stars as well. Yes, this is great. Debbie, I love realistic horror. It makes it more scary. Yeah, and see, that's why I thought I was kind of in the minority with that, because like the possibility of it happening, I guess, is what frightens people more, right? That's interesting. Another realistic horror is scarier. I love that. Yeah, so I feel like a lot of times we fear more like the things that can't that are actually able to happen, you know, simply
Mhm.
for the reason that a lot of us don't believe in the paranormal or the
Right.
supernatural, you know. So I think that's the key. Like if we don't believe in ghosts, then maybe we're not super scared of them. So you know, that kind of makes sense. Carly, I love all horror as long as it's done well. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, it has to, you know, be carried out or executed well, which I really enjoyed the way she handled a lot of the supernatural in this. I like
Mhm.
supernatural horror, but I think realistic horror is scarier. I love this. We can psychologically separate from the paranormal, but realistic horror is difficult for our minds to dismiss. That's
Yeah.
true, Dee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Ariel says realistic horror is definitely scarier. Yeah, so there seems to be a consensus with that one. Which is then I wonder why, like, you know, a lot of times we like I personally gravitate more toward books that are supernatural leaning or whatnot.
Mhm.
And even authors that tend to write a little bit more supernatural leaning, like Simone St. James, and I'm more likely to want to pick up books of certain authors that I know their horror is going to lean a little bit in the supernatural.
Mhm.
I tend to want to do that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the book itself, in case there are some people joining us that haven't read it yet. And I will let you guys know once we're going into full spoilers. I'll have a little ticker going on at the bottom, so you know you can exit the video if you don't want it spoiled. But so Jen and I agreed we would try to mutually do a summary of the book. So Jen, do you want to go first and then I jump in?
So yeah, we find out pretty much at the beginning that Jessie is a 13-year-old girl, or she's thinking back to being 13, and she dared her younger brother, who was getting on her nerves. He was like 8, wasn't he? 8 or 9.
Yes, yes.
And she dared him to go into this house. It was kind of, you know, those typical houses you hear about in your neighborhood. Don't go in that house, it's haunted.
Yeah.
But she never obviously really thought that he was going to get eaten by the house. So most of the book is her dealing with her guilt and trying to find out what actually happened to her brother, and going through several traumatic events other than just losing her brother, involving losing both of her parents too. So
Yeah.
it really deals a lot with grief and moving on in life and how we struggle to do that sometimes.
I love it. I think that's hey, you didn't need my help, Jen. That's good. That's a great summary of the book. Yeah, and it's it really does a great job of balancing like the present and the past. So the events that happened in the past when she dares her little brother to go into the house and the house eats him, and then balancing like the present. And I really do love the portions of the past that are narrated with like the knowledge of the future, if you know what I mean. Like I
Yeah.
really love that. I think that's where the book really like shines for me, because we know that she's speaking from the experience of the future looking back into those things that happened in the past. So I really enjoyed the way that she wrote that. So talking about the past, we know that we're in the present in some moments, and then it's actually taking place in 1993 for a lot of the book. So personally, that's something that I love. I love anything set in the 90s. I loved the nostalgia of this book, maybe because I grew up in the 90s, so this was it was saying all these things that I loved, like the references to Super Mario Brothers or Green Day, the band, and there was just so much there nostalgically for me that I really loved. What did you think of the 90s setting, Jen? Did that do
I
anything?
enjoyed that. I actually, I graduated from high school in 1993, so now you can all do the math and figure out how old I am. But I did like, the references to Nirvana and U2 and that kind of music. And I also like the way that she did it. It didn't feel like I'm going to bash you over the head with this nostalgia. It
Correct.
seemed very organic, and the way that any of us thinking about that time would be like, I was listening to this U2 song, or it's just, and I hate when something like bashes you over the head with nostalgia. And I like the way that it was naturally in there, and it just made it feel more real to me and to appreciate her character more too.
I agree. I love that. And I noticed that last night, I think? Yeah. Last night Eleanor sent on the Discord, she sent an interview that Christina Henry did for this podcast, and I was actually able to listen to it, and I thought it was wonderful.
I did
I'll
too.
go ahead and link that. I'll link it in the comments later for this live for those of you who are interested. But she did talk a lot about nostalgia, like, and she talked about all the things that in her youth, like she remembered, and she talked about growing up, being like a Blockbuster kid, like being going to the video store, and then everything she mentioned, it resonated with me, and I could totally tell why she did this in the 90s, and she said that there because it's such a part of who she is, and I definitely found that to be incredibly relatable. I thought that was so good. So her Converse that change colors as she gets older. Yes. I love that. That was so good. Yes, you got a gold star for the summer.
Thank you, Kat. I need some gold stars because I'm falling down in a lot of areas this week, but at least I got that one.
I love it. And Eleanor says also the realistic, lots of real life examples out there. Yes.
Yes.
We both got very serious with that one, but yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I did love the 90s setting. I thought it was wonderful. And seeing Jessie through both of those, like the version of her in the present and then the version of her in the past. So that's gonna kind of lead me to want to talk about Jessie, as our protagonist. I have thoughts about her. Like, I think when we first meet her, we're meant to not love her or not like her, or the first thing that we see of her is her doing this terrible thing to her brother, right? Like, and I think that really does affect the way we view her at the beginning, and then I feel she has this character arc, up until the moment where she's like a mom to EF, and like all of those, her behaviors with him as a caring, overprotective, like parent. So how did you feel, Jen, and everyone else in the chat? I'd love to hear your thoughts about Jessie and her character arc and all of that.
I feel like at the beginning, I am too. I'm an older sister, and my younger sister is 4 years younger than I am. So I could already relate to her. Like, you still calling him Paulie when he didn't want to be called Paulie, and saying, I dare you to go in the house, because she just wanted some time to herself. So I already had a lot of, I guess, insight into her, and I wasn't upset with her. I didn't dislike her. She seemed like a very realistic 13-year-old to
Yeah.
me, but I really appreciated, like you talked about, her character arc and her growth, because after everything that she had been through, she was able to stop doing the things that were not healthy for her, get herself, making grades and doing, having success and having an unexpected pregnancy. I also could identify with that. And the way that she was able to continue on with school and to build a better life for her son, she really became one of my favorite characters I've read recently throughout the course of the novel.
Wow. Yeah, now that you said that, it also reminds me of when I was reading the book, the pain I felt for her as a daughter, because of the way that her mother was herself coping with everything that she was going through, and how I wanted more for her. I felt like, she always felt like she wasn't enough, and how
Yes.
she was, always living in the shadow of the loss that her mother had suffered, right? And I really, that's, I think, when things started changing a little bit for me, of how I viewed her, because despite all of that, she's still able to be a good parent, and she learned to be a good parent, and she found role models that she could see as parental figures within her community, which is another important thing that I loved about the book, and I want to talk about in a little bit, but I thought that was great. Hi, Miriam. Welcome. You're never late. You're good. You're right on time. So Debbie says, I love the character, thought she was realistic. We all knew it was that girl growing up and how she was able to turn her life around, and it was amazing. Yeah. I think that speaks volumes of her resilience, right, as a character. And she was very real. I like that too. And that's, I appreciated that flawed version of her at the beginning, so that I could, appreciate her more toward the ending of the book. So yeah, she was great. I really enjoyed her as well. I did have other characters that I equally loved in this book. There were so many great characters in this. Jen, do you have any favorite characters or characters that you really liked?
I have to say Ted, deadbeat Alex's dad. I mean, just first of all, he ran over to try to save Paul and the other children. Then he tried to protect Jessie from seeing what her father did to himself. So I don't know if we'll talk about that yet. But then he tried to help his son, but I don't feel like he ever really enabled his son either. It was like that healthy kind of, I'm going to love and support my child. And I know that, he may never make anything of himself, and I'm going to hold him to certain things. And I also appreciated whenever Alex got out of the picture, Ted stayed there with Jessie and then was a great grandfather to EF. And that says a lot for his character. I just loved him so much.
Me too. And I love the portrayal of like a single dad. I really liked that. I loved how he found in Jessie like a daughter, right? The daughter he never had, and how his love for his son did not trump, or blind him to the realities of the world, and how he felt like Jessie deserved better. And, even though Jessie could possibly save him, like, he didn't want that for her, so I love the selflessness. I think he's selfless, and I really love that about him. He was a truly one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite.
Because he didn't even want Jessie to be with his son, because he knew that his son wasn't good for her, and that takes a lot for a parent to recognize that.
It does. It really does. So Kat says, I liked Jessie. I felt bad for her. However, she rose above all the heartache to be a great mom and fight for her family. Absolutely. And she never thought twice, right? Now that Kat says that, when she had to kick Alex out of her life, like, you're not good for me and you're not good for my son. That's the
Right.
most important part, right? So I really love that because I feel like Jesse developed into someone who wanted to protect, right? I think it stems from not being able to save her brother or protect her brother. So I think that we see that also when she tells Alex, you know, enough is enough. Miriam, Ted was also one of my favorites. Yes, he's such a wonderful, wonderful character. Ted and Jake are two
Yeah.
of my other favorites. Yes, Kat, me too. Ted was great. He was my if he dies, I'm done character. Yes. Oh my gosh, no. I would not have been okay with that.
No.
I totally would not have been okay with that. Carly says, as an older sister, I also
Yeah.
thought she was realistic about a pesky brother. See, I didn't get that because I'm not an older sister, so I didn't get that. But I felt sympathetic to her feeling like a spare and not equally loved.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I did feel that as well. Terry, I have a sister 9 years younger than me. I have also raised two teenagers, a boy and a girl. My daughter is 3 years older than her brother. I can see how her brother could get on Jesse's nerves. Yeah, I can see that. And then her comment continues. I can also see how she can make a rash decision in the
Right.
moment. Right, because I think, you know, when you're a child, and I do love how this book explores like children and their loss of innocence. Like this was, I thought, a great Bildungsroman because it's
Yes.
so good talking about like that loss of innocence and how, you know, children from one moment to the next grow up, you know, and I think that was it. Like for her, she was very much still a child, although she was like smoking and thinking about boys and doing all these things. She was still a child, you know. And what made her grow up was this terrible thing, right, that happened, and she was just unlucky. Like, in what world did she think, right, that, you know, shooing her brother away was gonna, you know, cause him to get eaten by this house, right? So yeah. I loved how he was so supportive of his son in spite of knowing who his son truly was, right? Yeah. There's that, I guess, that balance of knowing your child and loving them, but still knowing who they are, right? And I wonder about that though. Like if Alex truly was beyond saving, like I think that's something that kind of stayed with me, because he talked the whole time about changing for her,
Right.
and we kind of know that that's not right how things work. Most of the time, you have to want to change for yourself, and I think we learned that lesson. It's just so filled with like knowledge. I feel like the book has a lot of like those teachable lessons, right? Jake was a well-written character as well. He truly was a neighborhood dad. That was Terry's next comment. Jessie was my favorite. She was brave. She totally was brave.
She was.
Yeah, you know, and speaking of bravery, you know, as Eleanor mentions that, did you at any moment, and I didn't have this as a banner because it just came out, it came to my head, but did you ever wonder why she didn't leave, Jen, like, or anyone?
I did, you know, then I thought the reason she's staying is trying to find an answer,
Yeah.
trying to find out what happened. And then she sees other people going in there and then disappearing. So I feel like if we're thinking like, and I know grief is something we're going to talk about later, so I won't say a lot now, but I'm just thinking about the different ways that people try to get through grief, where her dad tried to destroy it and wipe it away, and he couldn't, and it ended up destroying him. But she's trying to sit with it and find her way through it. But you know, one of the families did leave, so I think they just not Jake's family, but you know, the other kid's family who was in the house, and so they left. I guess they didn't want to think about what had happened. They just would rather completely get away from it and not have to think about it, because their son also didn't bear any physical scars, whereas Jake was missing his arm, you know.
Correct. A little bit on Alex. Part of me also feels like Jessie never gave Alex a real chance. I get that she didn't really love him. Yeah, she talks about not loving him or lack of love, like I think at the beginning. And I think I felt that he loved her. I just think he didn't know how to love her any better, right? I mean, so that I think we can talk a little bit about that, like, you know, who loved who, and you know, or did they give each other chances? I mean, she did, you know, have a kid with him and start a life with him, right? So I mean, I think she tried despite knowing that she maybe deserved better. But yeah, that's a good point. Can we also give love to Sheila? Oh my God,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
Who also took a mother figure for Jesse? Love them. Absolutely.
yes,
Let me jump to my found family
yes.
banner to talk a little bit about that. So glad you brought that up. That's one of, and I keep saying I love this or that, but yes, this is one of the things I loved about this book. That
Mhm.
concept of the found family. I thought that was just so, it made me feel so warm inside that the community was almost like a character, like all of them together, right? Like fighting this huge monster that was this house. So I love that. I thought that was so good. So yes, we will give them all,
Yeah.
show them all the love that they deserved,
And I
because
thought it's such a juxtaposition the way that they stepped in to take care of Jesse, because one of the most horrifying aspects to me in the book is when they go back to the story. First of all, that's a horrifying story, Glenn McIntyre, but what
yes.
he did to his family. And, the sons, this is going to make me emotional. The sons showing up to school with bruises and obvious victims of abuse. And then after he murdered all of his family, all along people had thought that he wasn't abusing the girls, but then they found out that he was. It was just under their clothes where people couldn't see. And just the comments people made about, oh, he's just a cruel, hard man, and it's just a family matter, like not wanting to get involved, or the people hearing the screams and they just kept watching the soap opera, turned it up. And you know unfortunately, without getting too heavy, we see that kind of stuff happening now, like all the time, where people don't want to get involved, and these things continue to happen, and they're going to happen until somebody steps up and says, no, this is not okay. But that
Right.
just broke me so much, this idea of turning away because you don't want to have to confront you know
Yeah.
what's going on, even though it's horrible.
Yeah. I felt the same way, and I did like how they protected Jesse, stood up for Jesse, like even with the appearance of the old man, how they
Yeah,
protected her at all costs to make sure that nothing happened to her. And I love that Thanksgiving scene, by the way, with all of them
yeah,
there. That made me feel so warm inside, because that was her family. That was the whole reason she was able to, I think, make it that far, or feel strong enough to raise her kid. And it's because of that found family that she was able to find in these three characters, both of them, and Ted as well. Hi Jackie, thanks for joining us. I know Jackie read the book too, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. We have talked about rating and all of that, so if you want to jump on and tell us that would be great. As a non-horror reader, I thought a lot about why not just leave, right? Yeah, like why not just leave the town, the neighborhood, like the state. I don't know, get as far away from the house, right, as possible, especially after she has the financial ability to do it. For me, feeling like the protector of the neighborhood wasn't a great reason. Yeah, so what do we think, Jen, besides that? Like, I mean, because I thought for a minute she could not leave. There
yeah.
was something physically holding her, just like we know the house wouldn't burn, or like I felt at times like, because maybe her brother was there. I don't know. Like, did you have a theory as to why she didn't just, besides wanting answers, or?
Right. I just feel like she wanted that closure. But there were times I thought just leave, especially after she had EF. She had her son and the house was calling to him. I was like, leave, leave, leave,
Yeah.
you know. But I just, only reason I can think of is because she wanted that closure. She wanted to know what happened to Paul, and she wasn't going to be able to move on until she did. But that is still one of the questions, like,
Yeah.
maybe another reason I hadn't thought about, being possibly why I didn't give it 5. I gave it 4 stars
Yeah.
instead.
Yeah. A lot of people apparently wonder that. Kat also says, I wonder why Jesse didn't leave for a good portion of the book. It was the part of the book that I didn't care for, especially with the house reawakening and reaching out.
Kindred spirit.
Yes,
Yeah.
like the moment that she's saying, those parts when she's like, I think EF is old enough for me to have this conversation with him. Like, don't go near the house if it calls
Right.
you. It's like, okay, no, we're not having this conversation. We have to leave. But I do think that it is connected to her brother. I do think she knew he was there
Yeah.
this whole time. Part of her felt that he was there. I think that's what I'm happy with saying is my reasoning for that, right? Carly saying, didn't she get pregnant the first time? Yeah, right? She does. Yeah. Yeah, she totally did. Yeah. Uh I really love the found family aspects of this story, but I kind of get why Jessie wanted to stay
Hmm.
because part of her was still holding on to the unrealistic hope that she would see her brother again. Yeah, of course. And it ties to that guilt, right? Like it ties to the guilt of, I caused this, right? So now maybe I have to fix it. Like I have to be the one to bring him back. And she tries to do that, right? We know she goes in there and Alex kind of pulls her out. So she does try to go in there and, prevent that from happening. The Thanksgiving dinner at Jesse's house was heartwarming. I love that. And I related to when she says, oh, like all I want is for like this Thanksgiving dinner to go right. Or, I related. So, when you host your first
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, you're like, oh my gosh, I hope everything goes okay.
Or
You
how am I the adult enough to do
know,
this? I'm not old enough looking around for
yeah,
somebody, else like I can't do
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. The moment you stop being like the kid that your parents host and you're hosting, no matter what age you are, your parents are always looking at you like, are you doing a good job of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Thanksgiving dinner was one of my favorite times. Yeah, I think we all love that scene so much, right? Debbie loves that scene. Eleanor says the found family storyline was my favorite part of the book. Yes. And I almost wanted the community and the whole neighborhood to be strong enough to fight this thing and win. Did you feel like that at any point, Jen? And
I
people
did.
chat?
I did.
Yeah, right. Like I wanted them to be able to vanquish this evil, through their maybe that would have been too cheesy, right?
Right. But hey,
Yeah, but I I really wanted that. The Thanksgiving was a great scene. Yeah. I feel as if she didn't want the same thing that happened to happen to her brother happen to others. Oh, like a protector of everyone, right? It seems maybe it's just a guilt thing. Yeah, we keep going back to that, which is one of my banners that I'm gonna go ahead and pop on as soon as I get through all these comments. She did not want to leave her family and needed some type of answers. Yeah, so that's the consensus, I think. Not leaving made the ending seem inevitable, especially after EF. Yeah, I agree. I think Jesse always held out hope that Paul was still in the house since there was no body, right, to show he actually died. However, I think she still could have kept an eye on the house from afar. Yes, drive around every now and then, right?
Yeah.
And see what's going on. The thing for me is that she didn't cause the house. She's a victim of the house. That is
Mhm.
true. And I think that's common with guilt, right? Like once we feel guilt, even the guilt that is not our share to
Right.
feel, we feel it, and I
Mhm.
think that's human nature too, because she did one thing and now, she said one word to him, go into the
Right.
house, and now all of a sudden she's wholly responsible. And that's the ugly part of guilt, how hard we are on ourselves, I think. um I did understand why she stayed, but I question everyone else's motives. That's a great point, Carly. Why is everyone else staying? And the city, knowing what they knew, just ghosted them. Pun intended. Yeah, why did everyone else stay, right? Yeah, I agree. She could have also taken Ted with her and EF, right? Yeah, like let's just go away and get far away, as far away as we can, right? Um So I love that. Let's now jump into, since we're talking about the house. So as far as haunted houses, right? How did you guys feel about it? Like this being a haunted house story. I know we've all read, probably if you're a horror reader, we've read a lot of haunted house stories. How do we feel this one did? Like, what do we think about the way that Christina Henry carried out the haunted house? What do you think, Jen, and everyone else who's joining us?
Think one of the questions that I have so many times in my annotations is asking if the house itself was evil and it caused the people in it, like Glenn McIntyre. We find out not only did he kill his wife and children, but before that, he had killed his mom. And,
Yeah.
that to me was kind of like, I think another reason why I also didn't give it 4 stars, because I wanted to know more about the cosmic horror element. I didn't expect that. And so the question then is what caused this cosmic horror element? Why was there a crack there that allowed this evil entity or Cthulhu type whatever in? And I was just trying to understand that. So if I think about it in terms of grief, I can easily see how that haunted house is a metaphor for grief, but trying to tie in the cosmic horror element is a little bit fuzzy for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put the spoiler so we can feel a little bit more free to use examples, right? To talk about this. I do agree with you, and I did go back and forth a lot with the question of, what started it? Did he start it when he committed that? Was the house always evil? Is the
Mhm.
house alive, right? Because we're talking about this cosmic horror
Right.
thing. We're talking about how there's that mention or reference to Cthulhu with like the tentacles. So it kind of like, what came first? And it seems like it's a permanent thing. Like it falls back to sleep or it's dormant for a while and then it comes back, because I know that's one of like those ending lines about the house, right? That it's gonna,
Yeah.
until it's ripped open again. Like
Right.
that's one of the
Right.
last things. And she says, I keep alert and watch for creeping vines. So, this is going to continue, right? So I do like the cosmic aspect, a lot of it. I thought it was an interesting way of handling it. I do wonder the why though, like how, why it leaves us, I think, with a lot of, questions.
And it
Um,
only seemed to call to certain people too. Like some people couldn't hear or see what was going on. And
yeah.
I'm like, how is it choosing?
Yes.
Because it's not always choosing people who are going to do evil. Because Glenn, he did evil things, but other people were eaten by the house, or like Jesse's mom was spit out by the house. So I'm like, what? I need to know why.
I have a whole post-it note where I ask, like, I'm asking myself, like, how does the house pick? Like,
Yes.
why certain people? Like, what is it about it that it wants some people, rejects other people? Why do some people get like the starry eyes when they're looking at it? Why do others not get that? Like, are some people immune to it?
Right.
And I do know that there were the neighbors. Remember those other neighbors that would come and go and they didn't really care? I forget. I don't remember their names,
Oh
but
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know so like why were they like not affected by this, like
Yeah.
because they didn't care? So I guess so many questions as far as how it works,
Mhm.
um so Kat says, I find it interesting that there were no other people in the community that thought there was something sinister or supernatural with the house. Where were the ghost hunters and paranormal? Yeah,
Right.
because all they said was that it was different. Remember, like it was
Mhm.
made out of wood, I think.
Yeah.
It was like a not a two-story, it was different in sizing, right? They
Yeah.
mentioned that. I have to look into it. I don't remember clearly, but I know physically the house was like an eyesore, like it stood out from the other houses. So yeah, where where were these like
Right.
paranormal investigators or ghost hunters or whatnot? I find it interesting that the neighborhood never discovered strength in numbers, right, Terry? Yeah, that's what I kind of wanted, for them
Mhm.
to unite and kind of, vanquish whatever it is. I wish we had more action inside the actual house. Oh, that's a good point. I know we had some of the stories on the missing kids and what they saw, but I wish we had a little bit more aside from the ending. Sure. Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed that too. I think it would have been difficult to write, you know, but I think I like that. I think I would have enjoyed that as well. I was wondering about Glenn's mom. They made her sound at times unstable. Was it the house already doing something to her before she was killed? Did she make it come alive? Huh. That's a good question. Yeah. I know there were a lot of references to Amityville, so and we talked
Yeah.
about that on Discord, and I have a couple notes, and I think she actually says Amityville. Am I right?
Yeah, she did at one point.
Yeah. So I think she which I loved, by the way, all of the allusions to everything. I
Uh-huh.
was absolutely there for all of it. Like she was alluding to all these other, books and characters and all of that. But yeah, that's a great point, Debbie. Um I like the way the house shifted itself depending on the person entering, kind of
Yeah.
like a labyrinth, and the voices. I like that a lot too.
That gave me a
Um
hint of House of Leaves.
Yeah, I was gonna say kind of House of Leaves, right?
Yeah.
Referencing. And I also think of Slade House. I don't know if you've read that, Jen, or if anyone
You
has.
said recommended it to me, so I have it like on my wish
Yeah,
list. I want to get to
so
it.
good. I read that over a decade ago. I read that a really long time ago, but there's still scenes of that kind of like sticks. They're stuck in my head. And that now that Carly mentioned that, that's the first book that I kind of thought of that. But it is true. I did enjoy that the house was constantly like changing or evolving. To me, there was a cosmic horror portal. However, we never got good enough answers as to why there was a tear that opened the portal. That dude
Yeah.
showed up and explained feeding the monster in, right? The portal, feeding the monster in the portal, but no explanation as to how it
Yeah.
got there. Yeah. And I remember that, yeah, quite literally. I had to read that part over because quite literally they're feeding it. And the house is personified through and through. It has like eyes and it has a mouth and it
And it
breathes.
breathes, yeah, exhaling, and the heart at the end.
Yes. So I think it was very personified. But yeah, they don't explain to us how that happened, or what caused it, or you know didn't she call some neighbors inside another? Yes, that's what
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
The inside people and the outside people, right, that felt everything that happened more than others. And it seemed like those people didn't care, like they didn't even look at the house or care about the house, or
Right.
they were not affected by the house. That's true. I agree. I wanted to know how the house
Yeah.
chose and what caused it to go dormant and for how long. That's true
Yeah.
because, like, is it like every decade the house, wakes up again, or how often does it come back? I needed more mythology,
Yeah.
backstory. Absolutely, me too. I would have wanted
Yeah.
more lore, right? More lore as far as the house went. So we talked a little bit about the found family. I now want to talk a little bit about this keeper of the stories. This is something that I wanted, speaking of things we wanted more of, right? I wanted more of this whole thing of Jessie being the keeper of the stories. I
Mhm.
wanted that to go somewhere. I felt like she gave it legs, but it didn't really go anywhere. Do you guys have thoughts of that? Did you feel the same way about that? And I feel like Jake was also assisting her with that, right? Like with getting the story and all of that. Jen, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have thoughts on that?
Since you mentioned it at the beginning, I'm wondering if part of the way that she, eventually was able to, I guess, defeat the house, at least for the time being,
Right?
maybe because she did take the time to listen to the stories and to learn about other people's grief and trauma. So maybe that gave them the power to, like, at the end, like, squeeze that heart, which I did like the end too, the way that she talked about how tiny that was and how they had all kind of built this monster up to be something huge
Yeah.
and kind of in a way turned it into something scarier than it was when they sort of had the ability all the time to squelch that the monster was tinier than what they thought. So I just wonder if having the stories and giving a voice to those stories might have helped her.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because she's able to not overcome it, but she's able to do something she hadn't done before, you know, and she's able to see, you know, her brother again, and she's able to have that moment with him, which I do want to talk about in a little bit as well. I want to hear your thoughts on that. In my Instagram review, I wrote that it reminded me of Monster House. Yes, when it started adding the eyes and the mouth details. I love that movie, Miriam. I love that movie. And yeah, I agree. I agree. I didn't love that the house literally ate people. It seems so basic. Yeah, I can see that. And I wanted to. I guess you know why it didn't bother me, because I think it was like like it was them imagining it. Like I didn't think it was literal. You know what I mean? I feel like they were just going into like the hole and disappearing into the house, but it does describe it as having a mouth and actually eating it. So, you know, that's true. At least it's not like a permanent thing. The house kind of goes back to normal, like, you know, once it's over, right? But yeah, I can see that. I agree. I thought we would get some awesome plot point on all the stories and some kind of revelation on how to destroy it. Yeah, I agree. Me too. Terry says, I find it interesting that there is no time or story before the house was there.
Yeah.
Right. Because it seems like the house was always there, right? Like it had always, as far as we know, right?
Yeah, because we didn't really get to find out. The only thing I do know is like whenever that podcast that Eleanor shared, that episode where Christina Henry's being interviewed, I know one of the reasons she talked about the house, you know, kind of the inspiration for it to be built out of wood and to look different was because of the Chicago fire. Because after the Chicago fires, all the houses had to be built with like brick or something else.
Yeah.
So just having it there too. Is also a reminder of tragedy and grief, I guess, in a literal sense, when you think about, you know, something as horrible as the Chicago fire. So I wonder if that's just kind of like an allusion or reference to that actual event. But yeah, we don't ever find out how it got there or, you know, what the land was like before that. So
Correct.
it's a good question.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think if it is a cosmic thing, it would not have an explanation, you know, as to
Right.
how it got there. Like it just is. But it also seems like an easy explanation to not explain.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's like an easy way to not to get out of it without explaining. As someone who lives in Chicago, oh, that's so cool.
Ah,
Your information was awesome. That's neat. The fact that you're in Chicago. I think Chicago's like a big deal in the book. Like, and I was talking to Jen about that earlier because and I'm gonna jump very quickly to this one because we've kind of tapped into it. And I'm gonna pop it in here for a second. But about the book leaving us with questions, we've talked about so many things we wanted answers to. And a lot of my questions did have to do with like certain Chicago things that she kept mentioning over and over again. Like you know, she kept talking about the baseball team or the jersey. Like I thought that was gonna be like a big thing. I was waiting to make the connection or what it was. Did you guys feel the same way as I did? That this whole Chicago thing and the baseball thing and the jersey was gonna be like a bigger deal than, you know, than what it ended up being. Did you feel that way, Jen, about any of
I
those
just
things?
wonder if it was sort of like the 90s references, if it was a way to, you know, give a nod to people who do live in the Chicago area or kind of make the characters seem more realistic for living in that area, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought that would like tie in because I feel like they kept talking about his shirt and his shirt like over and over again. Like I thought that would kind of, you know, go somewhere like a little bit. So while you guys are mulling over that, let's talk a little bit about that guilt and that grief, right? Which ultimately I think is the centerpiece for this. I think everything revolves around guilt and grief for all of the characters or most of the characters. Did you like that the way that guilt and grief were handled in the book, Jen? What were your thoughts about that?
I did. In my opinion, that was one of the strongest points of the book because you do have Jessie grappling with her grief, trying to process it with her guilt and try to make things right as best as she can. And then like her dad trying to burn it all down. It's like he tried to destroy his grief, and you can't do that. You can't just destroy it. So it in turn destroyed him. And then, her mom, one of the saddest and most disturbing parts of the book is when she goes in her mom's room and finds out that all this time that her mom had that scarecrow-like figure of her dad laying there in the bed. That to me was like a very clear picture of grief. You're trying to hold on to some kind of remnant of your loved one, and it's just this false hope. And I also felt bad for her mom because the house was, laughing at her mom. And so I feel like that mom was also dealing with grief, and, not to be a psychiatrist because I'm not, but I felt like the mom projected a lot onto Jessie, a lot of her own guilt. And she was able to put that onto Jessie and target Jessie because the mom really didn't want to truly confront her grief either.
Yeah, I agree. And everyone deals with their grief however they can, right? But I did blame her a lot for not trying to be stronger for Jessie. Because at times I feel like Jessie didn't feel like she was good enough. She said, what about me? Like, I'm still here. Like, why can't you? We both lost. It was a loss for both. Like, and I guess that happens to a lot of people, right? When they share like a loss, it doesn't unite them a lot of times, but it rather, it separates them. So I think that happened, and I really hated when it was Jessie's birthday, and that happened on Jessie's birthday. I really, really disliked that scene. I thought it was just like, why? Like, out of all the moments, all the days, all the things you could have done, like, why now? And I do like the way that they address the theme of it, but I also dislike my reaction as a reader to want more from the characters, even though they're doing their best, but I think it's human nature to, want to say, hello, come on, snap out of it. You still have a daughter left, like you have to fight for her, but it's easy when you're not in that situation. So yeah. Let's see. So yeah, I think without having backstory about the portal, it makes it hard to accept the motive of feeding the people. Like, was this just an unlucky community? I'm a questioner and I want answers. Yeah, I agree. And I normally am like that too, Kat. But I think with horror, I kind of like accept things, right? Jen, do you do that too? Like, I just kind of,
it
I
depends. Like sometimes I do, and the other times, not. But
yeah. So I think it's just like I'm used to it, but I did want at least a little bit. Give me a little bit of more answers, I think the Cubs jersey is iconic. Everyone can picture a kid in a Cubs jersey. Sure. Yeah, right. So I think it makes him like more real to us, maybe, right? Yeah. I wish that Scarecrow doll story should have gone somewhere. That was genuinely disturbing. Yeah, it really was. And I was thinking, what does she have in there? Like, what's in the room? Because she wouldn't allow anyone in there. Like, what could be so terrible, so scary, so grotesque? And when we find out that this is what it is, I mean, oh my gosh, right? Like, that's just awful. Like, to that discovery was awful. And the way they talk about her wedding rings and how she never took them off. And, yeah, it was rough. I'm not a fan of cosmic horror because there usually isn't a backstory for the evil or the monster. It just appears from the vast universe, right? Yeah, Lenore, I agree, which is why I guess I wasn't wanting, or I guess I was okay with not getting more answers because that was my answer. It's cosmic, but it does leave you wanting a little bit more. So we've kind of talked a little bit about this, things we would have changed. So I know we've addressed the things that we would have, wanted to be different. Do we have scenes that we loved or moments that we absolutely like, really, really loved? I'll tell you, I loved the Jake and Jessie, relationship. I loved that friendship and how she was able to take him in as a little brother and he took her as like the sister. Is it Jake? Yeah, his name is Jake, right?
Yeah.
I love that dynamic. That was one of the things that I really loved. Do you guys have a scene in particular that you really loved? Jen, do you have a scene or something about the book that you really, really liked?
I was glad that she did get to see Paul and have some closure there. I
Yeah.
don't really understand it because I don't really understand where he was or
Yeah.
why he was frozen, but I still, you're not frozen as in free, but like frozen in time. He had never grown up, which obviously he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But I did like that she was able to get that time with him. And I do have something that bugged me about that though that I will mention, even though I did love it. But there's one thing, like Paul said that he had to go away for Ia to be born, and I don't like that idea. I don't like that somebody had to die for somebody else to be born. But
Yeah.
other than that, I did like the closure moment and the fact that she got to tell Paul, "I'm sorry, I never intended this."
Yeah. I'm wondering now, yeah, the reasoning behind the sacrifice. I think it goes back to like a sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
So are we saying then that Christina Henry makes him like a Christ figure? Like, does she make him like a Christ figure? Does it because he has to pay the price and sacrifice himself? Is that an archetype we're going with? Is that what she wanted? Is that where she was going? I do wonder that as well. The grief was the real horror, right? Because in real life it destroys people. I know people who lost someone and lost themselves completely, and it's heartbreaking.
Mhm.
And how long is enough? Yeah, right, Carly? I think that's such a good point. Like, when is it okay for you to let go of the grief, right? Like, when can you stop feeling guilty? Like, after what time? Like, how long does it have to be? What do you have to do to atone for, whatever you did? So I think that's a good point. um Okay, so we are coming up on the 1 hour. We've been on for an hour. So I do want to start kind of wrapping us up because, oh my gosh, I'm enjoying these conversations so much. But I do want to start kind of wrapping us up a little tiny bit. So let's talk a little bit about what other Christina Henry works you would recommend. So my recommendation is for The House That Horror Built. I love that one. I think if you enjoyed this, you would like that one. And it has a lot more explanations at this one. It doesn't really leave you guessing. I really, really enjoyed that one. Jen, do you have another Christina Henry recommendation?
Horseman, especially if you're a fan of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, or even if you're not, I still recommend Horseman.
Yeah, awesome. Let us know, friends in the chat, like which other Christina Henry. Some of you did it at the beginning. Maybe you want to put them now for people who joined a little bit later. What are those Christina Henry books that you recommend? And then what other books or films would you recommend to someone who wants more of this or who liked a lot of aspects of this? Do you have some, Jen?
First of all, It by Stephen King. There's a lot of similarities between the events in It, and also Black Mouth by Ronald Malfi, Summer of Night by Dan Simmons.
So good. Yeah, those are great. What do you have some films that you would say are well, Amityville, right? I think Amityville is
And
something that
actually, for some reason, like Oculus, the Mike
I enjoyed
Flanagan
that.
movie, there's something that, like, when it comes to guilt and family trauma and trying to undo the past, I think Oculus would be a good watch that would kind of be similar.
So good. I think I love that film. That was a really good one. And I think those are great comparisons. Some more things that we loved. I love the found family and the closure at the ending. Me too. I like the relationships that Jessie had with her son, with Ted, and with Jake. Any scenes with them together. Again, the Thanksgiving was a standout. Love that. I didn't like that he survived the house because he didn't believe it could. The house ate him. Yeah. So yeah, he survived because he didn't believe it. I thought that was I don't think they touched enough on that, right? Like, so then there is, because that gives us the interpretation, the feeling, right, that then he could survive it, like that it is possible to survive it if you don't believe in it. So if you don't believe in something, it can't hurt you, kind of a thing, So yeah, I thought that was interesting too. Yeah, I was thinking about it too. This was a first time read of Christina Henry. I will pick a few more. Good, Debbie. Yeah, we recommend those two. I think they are great. It was my first horror book I read. Wow,
Yes.
Debbie.
Congratulations.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad this was a good one, Debbie. I would say this is a good one. I think this is a good horror book. If you wanted to dive into like some aspects of the paranormal or supernatural or that kind of a thing, I think this is a really good one, and it has good memorable characters. I think the writing is solid. There's so many things about it that I liked. I really like her narrative style and all of that. Thanks so much for the wonderful discussion, ladies. Y'all rock. Thank you for joining us and for finishing that. Thank you so much. So yeah, guys, as we're wrapping this up, again, I want to thank Jen for joining me so much, for being my co-host. I appreciate you, Jen, so much. Thank you. And I want to let you guys know the February book for the Haunted Library is The Wasp Trap by Mark Edwards. And some of our members are already reading it. Some people said that they're loving it, that, they've already gotten 10% in and they can't stop reading. Someone finished it already and gave it 4 stars. So it sounds promising. It's kind of got some interesting, like, speculative back and forth also. Not speculative, but like scientific stuff going on. So it's more of a mystery, I think. This one, I wanted to make sure that I stayed true to wanting to do like horror, mystery, and thriller books. So I didn't want to pick another horror, but this one's more like mystery leaning. So it should be good. But this will be our February read. So if you guys would like to read along with us, I would love that. I also want to make sure that you join our Discord if you want to keep up with everything that that we're reading and talking with us about all that stuff. Let me do some last comments. Welcome to the horror show, Debbie. Yes. And this was Ariel's first horror book. So I think it's pretty good that he liked it good enough, I think. Thank you both. I'm starting the Wasp Pack tomorrow. Yes, me too, Carly. I was like, let me just once I am done with the live show, I can go ahead and put this book out of mind, and then I can go ahead and write this one. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Eleanor. I appreciate you reading along and being here. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.